Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Steven Rockwood Show. As you know, my name is Theodore Seuss Gissel, and I am joined here today with Robert Haines, life coach of Engineering Your Life. How are we doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. Good to be here with you, man.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you as well. We had a great conversation last week that honestly would have been podcast worthy, in my opinion, but we weren't recording. So now we're actually recording. How's your Friday been so far?
It's been pretty good, rather peaceful. I reserve my mornings for grounding myself, and especially since I retired, that's allowed me to do that, and it sets my day off really well.
Awesome. Well, I introduced you as a life coach, but that's not what you retired from. So let's get that backstory as to how Robert became a life coach and what you were doing before that inspired it.
Okay, well, there's a long story. I'll try and hit the highlights, but I spent 37 years as an engineering manager, project manager. I have a degree in mechanical engineering. I love things you can touch that move and like do stuff. No offense to the electron pushers or the, code jockeys, but that was my jam. I had erector sets when I was a kid. So, in fact, these pictures that are up here above me, if you can see them, represent me as an engineer as early as the age of like 2.
Okay.
So that's always been my jam. I didn't quite realize that I thought I was going to be an architect in
Okay.
high school. So I designed houses. I had a lot of fun with drawings.
Yeah.
I love mechanical drawing and that kind of realistic art. And that found me in mechanical engineering. And then I graduated and I did various jobs, but largely they were around product development and design. I really I enjoyed pretty much every part of the curriculum. I was a real twisted guy. I loved thermodynamics and statics and dynamics and kinematics and simulation. I have a particular fondness for simulation.
Okay.
When I discovered spreadsheets as an intern, I discovered Lotus 123 in 1986.
Okay.
Um, Dating myself, yeah, I'm old. I'm 60, by the way. And and then that led to really a lot of I loved analysis. I loved really understanding how things work. So that took me through 4 or 5 different jobs, the first 11 years of my career, and then I found a small company. Um, uh, as I was kind of recoiling from my first adventures in management, which weren't that positive.
Yeah.
Um, and then I found a company called DH Instruments, which did very high-end pressure calibration devices, like national standard level in some cases.
Okay.
Um, and that was a wonderful place to be a mechanical engineer. I got to embrace all of the things, including, heat transfer and thermodynamic analysis and fluid flow, the works. And that company got acquired by Fluke Electronics, global leader in test and measurement.
Okay.
And all told, I spent 25 years
Yeah.
uh, at that collective company. And so that took me up until January of last year.
Okay.
Wonderful stuff. Loved it. Loved the people. Loved the work. Loved the products. It was a real chance to really use my skill set. But as I was winding down towards the end, and there's a whole other story and probably a whole other podcast about that process,
Yeah.
I discovered how much relating to people and helping them really mattered to me. And again, there's a big story around that, but I chose to retire January of last year,
Okay.
2024.
And you said you're 68 right now?
I'm
So you're
60. Oh, hell.
60. That's what I
Dude,
thought you were. That's what I thought. I heard 68 on this
I
one, and
am,
I heard 60 last time. And I
I
was
am
like,
60.
all right,
Yeah,
you don't look a
I,
day
I,
over 50. You're
I
set.
hope not to be mistaken
No,
but
not
anyway,
even close.
the key to youthfulness is stay immature. I think that's been it, and this guy,
I was just about to say, we didn't even point out our mutual
Lucky's over
pushes
there.
behind us.
And this is my inner child, Robert Blaine. He's in a hoodie. He has seasonally appropriate attire.
Nice.
And that's his kind of like spring is over here. It's going to be almost to 100 in the
What?
next. Yeah, I'm in Phoenix. We're going to be at 98 degrees in a week.
Oh
So,
my goodness, I'm getting a snowstorm on Sunday.
well, you know, That's how it rolls. Oh, I am departing from your question.
That's okay. It's going to happen the entire way, I promise. I'm just
I,
that kind of host.
I do that well, and I'm that kind of guest. This is a dangerous combination. Anyway, I found myself really caring about people a lot, doing as much coaching-like work on the job as I could. So I have people that I've been mentoring for 3 or 4 years. I got involved in initiatives. I have a particular passion around empowering creativity and innovation. I had several initiatives within the company that I felt really, really passionate about that kind of woke me up. And, awakening in that form has been a really powerful thing for me. I also dive deep into spiritual study, which again, probably another podcast for that.
Yeah.
And so basically the calling that I have got strong enough. And I'd realized, because I have spreadsheets, right, that I could survive without working. I don't have high expenses. I don't have high needs. I'm not a high maintenance person. So I realized I could survive the rest of my life without working. And because this calling wouldn't shut up, I'm like, okay, well, 25 years is a nice round number. I like round numbers. So I gave notice, wound down 25 years with a company, which was not trivial,
Yeah,
because
that's a long
it's
time.
very important to me to hand it off well. And that was a lot of history to record.
Yeah.
Starting January of last year, I'm a retired person, but it's not to golf or, as I wrote in an email, Netflix and nachos.
Yeah.
It was because the calling to help people was too strong. And I spent most of last year setting up foundation. And in July, I created Engineering Your Life as a registered business in the state of Arizona. I have a domain,
Nice.
engineeringyourlife.net. I don't have a website yet, but I do
Yeah,
have a LinkedIn presence.
you do.
How I met you.
That's how we met. Yeah.
My
LinkedIn's done
first
good
LinkedIn
things.
post ever
Yeah.
was when I announced my retirement.
Okay.
And I had so much anxiety over writing that I rewrote the post completely 10 times in about 2 hours
Oh, yeah.
and was just tearing myself up.
You're
But that was
engineering the post.
I was definitely, I was terrified of what people thought of me. But that's been part of why I do what I do, because I've had crushing self-image issues, no matter how much I succeeded. And I had to do a lot of internal work just to be okay. And so that work that I've done has led me to realize that I can help other people do that. And so now that's how I find myself as a life coach, and perhaps how I see you and
Yeah.
what you do. And so anyway, long answer to the question.
No, for sure. And I love having life coaches and business coaches on the show because I'm in a similar niche and work with some of the same clients, and it never feels like a competition. Like it feels like coaches are all there supporting each other, at least the good ones, because they know that they're not the perfect fit for everybody, but they might have a network of people who it would be a good fit for. So,
And we support each other.
yeah.
I spend most of my time finding other resonant people like you that I'm like, whoa, I want to talk to you and find out what you're about and how you support your world. Because I'm not in this for me. I'm not in this. I mean, I will accept income. I could use it really, yeah.
Yeah.
But I
I mean,
don't need it. I don't need clients. What I
yeah.
want to do is help the world to be a better place
Yep.
and help people to help themselves and help others. So, so why
Yeah.
not support other
Yeah,
coaches?
no, for sure. And yeah, one thing I think I might have mentioned this last week when we talked. We just had a little coffee chat just to talk to each other for the first time in person, actually. But I think I told you one thing. Even if you don't need the money, I always like to charge something just so that you can filter out the people that aren't going to show up or aren't going to put any effort into it. Because with coaching and like schooling in general, if you put money into something, you're more likely to follow through with it. Whereas if it's something that you were given for free, there's a good chance you'll just be like, I'll set that on the wayside. So
Absolutely. And I appreciate that. And I feel the same way, maybe for slightly overlapping reasons. I think that when I commit to something and commit to spend money on it, I take it more seriously and I get more out of it. My internet's kind of coming in and out at the moment, so hopefully that doesn't glitch.
oh,
But
hold on one moment. We'll restart from that moment. There we go. Now we're good.
all good. Yeah, well,
What,
hey, that's how it goes these days.
that's
Sometimes.
technology. I know. No, trust me, it happens every time, at least once. So that was actually a shorter one than usual. So we're actually pretty good.
No
Um,
problem. So
but
back to answer your question, or
yeah.
to address your point. Yeah,
Hmm.
I believe in charging people, even though I do a lot of pro bono work. Um, out of service, and I do a lot of work with my church and stuff like that. But when somebody is engaged in a contractual relationship, the boundaries are much clearer, the intentions are much clearer, and then they're engaged more because they're like paying for it. It matters. And so not only does it filter out the people that aren't serious, it takes the people that are engaged and they get more out of it by doing that. So it ends up being a real win-win to find what, your niche is
Yep.
and to charge appropriately for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm one of those people that like I change my price depending on who I'm talking to and depending on the service that I'm doing. So, if I do a lot of free work and at the same time I'll do a lot of discounted work because I'm like, I really want to help you, but I know you can't afford this. So let's just make it cover my expenses and we're fine.
Yeah, I have a friends and family discount at the moment, especially because I'm going through a really intense, powerful training, a year-long training, which it's not trivial for cost to me at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
In fact, if I use my friends and family discount, it'll take 880 hours of work to pay for this training. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's a lot.
but I'm not at the moment. I'm not in it to generate the most profit I can. I'll need that to fund my growth, so that I can then reach the people that I want to.
Yep.
But yeah, I do. I'm now charging, and it was challenging.
I was just about to ask you that. How did you jump the hurdle? So I know you and I talked to Sarah Berry a lot. She's going to be on the show
Oh
soon.
yeah,
We've done a
love Sarah.
live together. Yeah, Sarah's great. But we've been talking about this a lot is how do you make that jump to doing stuff for free or being the nice person who's educational to charging money?
Well, that's an internal journey all on its own to one feel like I'm worth it. So if I don't think that I offer something of value, no one else is going to.
Yeah.
So that was years of work to do that. And then it was not feeling like I'm imposing on somebody or making a hardship for them. And it wasn't easy, but I've now got a couple of paying clients. I have an individual, and I have a couple.
Yeah.
Oh boy, it's a joy. I'm working with a couple. I'm actually officiating a wedding.
Oh,
And so this couple is getting coaching from me on,
yeah.
on healthy relationships and building a healthy marriage. And it is such a joy
Yeah.
to do that work, especially like preemptive work, because I've been married before. I've
Yep.
been married actually 3 times, so I have a lot of experience
Yeah.
in part in what not to do, but
Yep. Yep.
also,
I'm also divorced, so we're aligned there. You just got 2 more up on me.
I don't know. I'm not going to congratulate somebody for that at the moment, but it's so meanwhile, I turns out I really, really care about what healthy, honest communication looks like. And so I get to help a couple. I also help individuals that are learning how to have healthy relationships anyway. And so I'm helping couples through the man.
Yeah.
So it's something I care about. So charging these folks was interesting because they know me, they're friends of mine.
Yeah.
And so it's one thing to charge anyone. It's another thing to charge a friend.
Yeah.
But what I realized is, I have something of value. I believe I can help.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a friend I was talking to. I had a coffee chat that lasted 3 hours.
Yep.
And I realized as I was sharing my challenges, my friends shared their challenges, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of commonality here. I really resonate with what you're going through. I think I can help you.
Yeah.
That was step one.
Okay.
I think I can help you.
Yeah.
And then step two was to me to just say, well, my normal rate is different from this, but I have a friends and family discount. For me, that's $100 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be willing to help you if you want. Up
Yeah.
to you, no big deal. And it turns out that after several weeks of consideration, then I needed to create an intake form.
Yeah.
So now I have an intake form.
Awesome.
And that was also growth for me. So it is uncomfortable to lean into that self-image challenge, but
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable is the path to growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no real growth without that.
Yeah, no, exactly. I talked to Arbor on the podcast
Oh,
2 weeks
yeah.
ago, and we had that exact conversation where he's autistic. So when he would go to public events and things, like he had a hard time relating to people, and he said he'd get really nervous beforehand. But I said, like, the nerves are important because that means you're doing the right thing because you care about it. So it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if you're nervous, it means you care, which means you're in the right spot. So like you'll eventually power through the nerves and things will work out. It might be your first event, might be your 10th, but at some point, like you'll always be a little bit nervous. Like I've done a million public speaking events, and every time I'm still a little nervous when I step on stage, and I just look at it as like excitement and as a way to show that, yeah, I'm doing the right thing because I care about this enough that I'm nervous, because if I don't care about it, I'm not going to be nervous.
That's I like that. I like how you put that. And honestly, even though we had such a great chat,
Hmm.
last week, I was a bit nervous coming onto here.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to ignore the fact that this is going to be listened to by people other than you.
Fair.
But but still, it means that I'm engaged, that
Hmm.
I have a stake in it, and sometimes in my history, many times, I have overinflated the risk
Hmm.
of a situation. And so, yeah, there were much of my life, I had severe anxiety about being on display, which was interestingly coupled with a desperate desire for validation,
Yeah.
which put me in this very interesting loop over and over again, where I would be in a position to speak publicly and then just go through really tough times
Yeah.
and then say, gosh, I really shouldn't do that again. But then I would do it again.
Yep. Do it again. Yeah. One thing I always suggest to people when they are, when they are doing a lot of public events or something, or they're doing a lot of coffee chats and like coaching calls and they're still nervous, is take all the good feedback you get and put it in a folder somewhere or something. So on days where that confidence is wavering or you're just like, am I doing the right thing? Just go open that folder and look at all the people that appreciate what you do. And that helps so much.
It does. And that becomes yet a bigger topic. One of the things I've had to learn, because I've spent my life chasing validation.
Hmm.
Because I mean, we talk about the term imposter syndrome. I used to think I was the only one.
Yeah.
I thought it was just me. I had this horrible fear that I would be discovered for the fraud that I am, and then I would be ostracized or whatever. Seriously, I spent my life feeling like that.
Hmm.
And so what I've come to try to do is to be a little less attached to what other people think of me, even the good stuff, maybe even especially the
Yeah.
good stuff, and start to do things just because it's the right thing.
Yeah.
From a spiritual standpoint, it's what the universe would like.
Yeah.
It's what makes the world a better place. And when I can be aligned on that, then the nerves go down a lot,
Hmm.
because it's no longer about my ego.
Yeah.
It's no longer about me.
Yep.
And that's not what my business is about. My business really isn't about glorifying Robert.
Hmm.
It's more about I feel so great when somebody's life gets better
Yeah.
or easier or they find joy in things that used to be difficult for them. I really like that.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. And actually, one of my favorite things in the world is to see someone who is really uncomfortable or shy in a certain situation, but they're like an expert guitarist or something. And then you see them in their natural element doing the thing they're good at, and they're a completely different person. That's like one of my favorite things to see because it's just fun to, see how someone can completely change because they're comfortable with something and they're a master of it versus their uncomfortable self.
Yeah, well, and it's really interesting. I love to help bring that into the conversation.
Hmm.
And everybody I work with has a significant level of creativity and leadership. These are common qualities amongst my folks,
Yeah.
right? And so bringing the creativity that they may have in music or poetry or art, just as three
Hmm.
examples, and realizing what that's like and what that feels like and what essence of them is coming out through that, then bring that into the area that is, let's say, a growth area.
Hmm.
It's been an interesting process of just helping that because yeah, I'm like you. I love seeing people like be themselves full out while
Yeah.
I'm simultaneously a little weirded out by it.
Yeah.
Um, and I have a whole example in the last week of that. So yeah, it's fascinating to see somebody be themselves.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest ones I've seen recently was the show 90 Day Fiance. I don't know if you ever watched that, but basically it's people trying to get their green cards. So they have 90 days to get married, essentially. So it's like super speed dating.
Oh
But
Lord.
so there's usually a language barrier because they're from different countries. So there was one guy who only spoke Spanish, so he was super quiet the entire show. Like he barely spoke because he didn't speak English, so he spoke very little. And then they showed clips of him after he left his life somewhere in South America. So he was a pop star, like a famous pop star. So
Oh
he's
Lord.
like, so they're showing him in this room, like talking to these people and just being super shy because he doesn't really speak the language. And then they show him in music videos and on stages in front of thousands of people being himself. And it's like, it's a whole new person.
It's I haven't seen you be the shy version of yourself. I don't know. Maybe that's my all I get is
Yeah.
what I get through LinkedIn, but it's you show up as being comfortable with you and comfortable with people.
Yeah.
And while your stuffed friends really seriously appealed to me when you brought them out, and especially when you had them watching the movie on the
Yeah.
screen, literally I was like had tears coming down my eyes. Because that's a level of vulnerability that most men aren't willing to share.
Yeah.
And it really touched me that you were willing to do that. And it's one of the reasons I became a fan,
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I appreciate it. I'd put you as a friend, not a fan at this point, but
Yep, yep. I can be a fan too.
yeah,
I
I'll
can be
take
a
both.
fan. But yeah, it's I that peak inside. Well, I mean, the word vulnerability is sometimes abused,
Hmm.
although I think Brene Brown puts it really, really, really well. Um, it's not just nice or helpful or convenient, worse yet, manipulative. It is essential to be able to connect on a meaningful level.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter whether you're in a high stakes military operation, and there's some amazing books about vulnerability in that.
Hmm.
And what it takes to trust at that level where somebody literally has your back and would give their life for you, that still involves intense vulnerability. So I've become a fan, even though most of my life I was terrified of it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I appreciate that. Well, I mean, that's part of why, this guy happens to be, on camera is because that's vulnerable for me to bring
Yeah.
him out. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
No. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, well, if you ever want to see me subdued, just go watch me at the gym or in a department store. I very much keep to myself, and then if
Oh,
I have a question or something, I'll approach anyone, or if someone talks to me, I'll just go into full-on Steve mode. But for the most part, I am a very quiet, subdued individual in the real world. Like you wouldn't even notice me.
and was that what you were like most of your life?
I was the kid that would hide behind his mom's leg when she'd introduce me to people.
Me too.
Yeah, so
I
I was
literally, I had pictures of me.
Yeah, super shy. I was in speech therapy growing up, like in elementary school. That's where I learned that I was colorblind. I think I touched on this in a different
Oh,
episode too, but I was doing speech therapy because I had a really bad stutter and I was also shy. So the combo of that's not great because if you're afraid you're going to stutter and you're already afraid to speak, you're probably not going to speak very much. So, but we're just doing little tests and like she would just like she'd have me read books and things like little children's books, and one of them just happened to be a colorblind test book because she just wanted me to say the numbers and the letters. And we got to one page and I was like, she's like, what number do you see? And I was like, what do you mean, what number do I see? I see a bunch of dots. And she's like, oh, try this one. And I was like, nada. And she's like, oh, you're colorblind. That's a fun realization. So, but that helped a lot. And then honestly, the thing that really got me out of my shell was kind of two part. I started YouTube way back in 2004 or five.
that's a
And
hell of a way to get out of your shell. All right.
yeah, so, but I wasn't recording videos like this. I was making video game videos. So the game Halo, which I have the encyclopedia back there,
Okay.
um, I was making videos for that. And then eventually I started doing commentary over the top. So I had this little shitty microphone that you could barely hear me. And I was so nervous to even publish the video that I lowered the sound levels to like the lowest possible so you could barely hear me talk because I was even nervous to put a pre-recorded audio file on the internet to strangers. And then I just kind of built my confidence from there, and then after a while I started live streaming, so then I was in front of the camera, and then at that point it was just kind of like, all right, I can do this. Like if I can do this in front of any random person, including the internet, who are the meanest people to ever exist, I can definitely do this in real life.
Wow, that's an interesting, and I'm kind of coming about it from a very similar original background. Right? I was a
Yeah.
really shy kid. I didn't have, speech therapy or color blindness, but I didn't feel like I belonged
Hmm.
almost anywhere,
Yeah.
especially around people my age. I connected to adults,
Hmm.
so I would like talk to teachers, but not students.
Yeah.
I had almost no friends, and then I got involved in music.
Okay.
And so I got involved in, I played trumpet. I started playing in fourth grade.
Nice.
I was like, my whole family got into that. Not that it became a whole world. In fact, there's even stuff up on the wall about that. And that became where I could be safely out there.
Yeah.
And I was put in charge of a brass section when I was only 14 years old
Okay.
of students much older than me.
Yeah.
And then I developed a persona,
Yeah.
this kind of energetic, emphatic, somewhat demanding, all right, very demanding, persona at the age of 14. And that's where the introvert, which is my actual personality, learned how to play extrovert.
Yep. Yeah. I'm also an introvert, and everyone thinks I'm an extrovert.
And people thought for most of my life that I was an extrovert.
Yeah.
I thought I was an extrovert.
Hmm.
But it turns out that I recharge in solitude and reading books and being in nature and going on hikes on my own. And when I'm with people, I'm very energized, and then I crash.
Yep. Yeah, you get the dump. That's what I always call it. I call it my people dump.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been interesting. And I've done a lot of stuff in front of people. I've done presentations live. I've done, meetings where I was running it, and people would try to like calm me down afterwards because I would start to speak really fast. And, that's part of where I realized it took me till I was in my 50s
Yeah.
to realize I had ADHD.
Yep.
it explained a lot, but I can get hyperactive and my brain in that I can be overclocked.
Yeah, for sure. There's some computer terms.
Yeah. So and when I'm doing it, my brain will just go, but that there's a cost to that, and what I've had to learn, which again, maybe it's going to be a book, at least one, where I
Yeah.
talk about emotional regulation and what I've had to learn to be healthy, knowing that my brain can go rather quickly. I took medication for a while, but now I don't, for two reasons. One, the medication has side effects, and two, because I've learned a lot of techniques which ultimately are spiritual in nature to be able to regulate
Yeah.
and find medium. It doesn't mean I don't fly. If you look at my posts in the last week,
Yeah.
I was flying.
Oh yeah.
But I can find my way, back down and
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. One thing that I've always, so when I was streaming, there'd be hundreds of people in my stream and they'd be writing comments. I'd be talking to people for like 4 to 8 hours.
oh Lord.
And and then I'd end stream and all of a sudden I was alone, which was the strangest feeling because you feel like you're on for 8 hours. Like you were like, I need to be here, I'm present, I'm on. And then as soon as you hit end stream, the audience just disappears and you're like,
Ooh.
what the it's a weird feeling. And I've always wondered how like stand-up comedians and famous musicians and big bands like feel after a show, because at the end of the day they're going back to their hotel room probably by themselves to stare at a wall, or their camper to stare at a wall. And I'm like, how weird is that feeling of 20,000 people were just chanting my name or my band's name and now I'm alone in silence.
Oh, well, I mean, if you can handle that well, um, it's okay. When you can appreciate solitude instead of feel like I can't take the crushing silence.
Yeah.
Some people can't take that. And that's where, numbing behaviors show up. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of them, there's alcohol. I never had an issue with that. There's drugs. I was a workaholic.
Yeah.
Wow. Like I literally used work as a drug when I was anxious. And so I didn't work. I mean, I worked a lot too, but that's different. Workaholism doesn't mean you work a lot. It means you use work to medicate your emotions.
Yeah.
And there's people that use technology. It's a common issue these days. There's people that use codependence where they like start controlling other people's lives. There's lots and lots of ways. Gambling. There's a long, long list of things people will do. And when you can't handle, the emotions of life, sometimes it's because you had trauma. Sometimes it's because you had like premature or excessive fame.
Yeah.
Then sometimes people handle it well, and sometimes people get into serious trouble
Yep.
from stuff like that. And I certainly have my story of things I've done to try to make myself feel better. Ultimately, those got bad enough that I found other processes that helped me, which is also part of what brought me into coaching, because my coping mechanisms weren't always healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fair. Yeah. I feel like I got lucky in a way because I'm an only child. So I got used to being on my own and like, I enjoy my private personal time. Like, my mom even said, like, when I was getting married for the first time, or if I talk about a girlfriend, like my current girlfriend moving in, she's like, just make sure you have a room for yourself because I know that you need like your space because that's just who you are.
That's really wise. Sounds like you got a pretty good mom.
I do. I have a good mom, a good dad. My dad helped me switch out my tires yesterday because I blew two of them on a pothole last week. I don't remember if that was before or after I spoke to you, but I blew two tires on a pothole. Yay, Minnesota. Um, St. Paul, I'll be sending you the bill. My dad actually was here the other day because I got my camera stuck on my tripod to the point where I could not get it off. It was
Oh, Lord.
So he came over and we had to use 4 hands and like a chisel and something else to like lift it off. It was crazy, but we got it. So my parents are very helpful. I say my dad is the handy one, and then my mom is the emotional support and the fun one. So my mom and I will go out like for brunch and stuff and do that kind of stuff. And my dad and I are always doing, for the most part, we're working on something.
Well, that's really cool. I mean, not everybody, has healthy relationship with their parents. Some of us learn healthy behaviors from our parents. Some of us learn healthy behaviors in spite of our
Yeah,
parents.
because of our parents. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So my parents weren't. I thought my life was normal. I found out later with a lot of work that some things that happened to me when I was younger really set me up to be needy and fearful. My dad had issues. His dad was a real challenge. And so my dad used, ignoring and literally turning his back as a way of dealing with his own shame. Well, when you're young and, playing Little League and you miss a ball in the outfield and your dad's the coach and then he doesn't talk to you the rest of the game,
Yeah.
that leaves a mark.
Yeah.
And then that was one of many, many episodes that happened when I was younger that led me to come to the belief that my only value came from doing things well. And well, one of the consequences of that is that I put a very high focus on doing things well and perfectly and, sharing my successes and hiding my failures.
Yeah.
And learning to be vulnerable about things I've done wrong, that's new for me. But yeah, in the past, if I was behind on a project, you would never know.
Yeah.
And I would work 80 to 100 hours a week to catch up, work nights and weekends, and then I would tell you.
Yeah.
But that's not a healthy way to go about working. But I learned it as a child that if I didn't do things well, I wouldn't get help.
Yeah.
I would get ridiculed. So props to you and your parents for maybe, doing it a different way,
Yeah. Yeah. No, my parents were good. My grandparents were amazing, so that helped. But yeah, one of the first moments I feel like as a kid that I like actually felt empathy and like acknowledged it was when I was playing soccer. And this kid on my team who I hated, could not stand him, but he kicked a ball, like he passed it to me and it just flew. It was a terrible pass. And then he yelled at me. He's like, "Why didn't you get that, Steve?" And then his dad on the sidelines goes, "That was a terrible fucking pass, Griffin. Do better." And I was like, all right, I see why this kid is kind of a dick.
Yeah,
So,
you don't have to look very far. And one of the things I've learned as I watch people, and I do, is even people that are toxic, and there may be a few in the world showing themselves these days. Most of the time, they had an environment which created that kind of behavior just to survive. And while I don't condone it, I don't like it, and it triggers the snot out of me sometimes, especially because I got bullied in school.
yeah.
One of the things that I can do is like have some empathy, your word, for these people, and it doesn't fix things, but it stops me from basically trying to demonize them.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm the same way. It's like originally I thought that they were, just a dick or they're just mean people. But and at the end of the day, a lot of the time they don't know that they're being awful people. Like in their brain, they think, this is the way to go. And I think it takes a lot. You have to talk to a lot of people and like observe a lot to really get that perspective because I can still dislike what people do and dislike them in general, but at least I understand like where they're coming from and why I have that dislike for them. So,
I used to, yeah, I absolutely, and I used to just blame myself. That was, a child reaction. I basically was reverting to being a 5-year-old again. And anytime somebody got upset, I'd beat myself up. And if I made a mistake, I beat myself up. Pretty much my default reaction to life was to beat myself up. And you don't learn when you do that.
Yeah.
All you do is like put immense pressure on yourself, and then that pressure rarely gives you the freedom to be expressive or try stuff that might not work. And then you get super, super, super careful, I have, I don't have TMJ, but I have ground my teeth a lot.
Yeah.
Which is a physicalization of internal stress. It's a common one. And so one of the things that I've had to, my life is better now.
Yeah.
That I don't internalize that stuff as badly. And, I can actually handle conflict now when I never, ever could. But it took a lot of work. I took a very good therapist and, and a lot of diligent practice and some caring people in my life that would care enough to, one, forgive me and tell me. And now those are my dearest friends, people that, one, love me even though I'm flawed, and two, call me on my shit. Robert, you did that.
Yeah.
That hurt. What's up? And then I get a chance to kind of like own what is mine.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a life lesson that I try to help other people do, because I find society does not do the best job of helping us learn that lesson.
Yeah.
And many parents are wounded. And they don't know. Like my parents didn't know. They tried.
Yeah.
They just, there was after effects. And so I get to learn it in other ways. And now I spend time, I help a lot of young people. I work with teens and Gen Z folks and stuff like that. I have all ages, really.
Yeah.
And so now I try to help them have a healthier view of themselves and life, because most of my life I did not, holy crap, I did not have a good view of myself or the world.
That is fair. Well, I have a question on that. I taught tennis to like 4 to 18, 20-year-old kids for 8 years, but it was 2010 to 2018. So have you noticed the communication patterns are different between like the Gen Zers or the younger people that you talk to versus the older ones, or does the communication seem the same? Because in my brain, I'm going technology on the Gen Z, and how that kind of changed how they are in person.
I'm probably not the best one to answer that, but I have brothers that are teachers.
Okay.
And it's not just the generation. COVID
Oh, yeah.
killed social interaction for a whole group of students. And there's a huge difference that my brothers are noticing. They're music teachers, right?
Okay.
So, they continued the tradition. I went into engineering.
I like it.
And so in my case, I'm finding that unless somebody's wounded enough that they're just dysfunctional and destructive, which, I don't run across a lot of those folks as young people right now, but I have found that when you treat young people with respect and vulnerability and you own your stuff, that they then open up. Like, thank God there's somebody I can relate to this way. And I actually have found that with the folks that I work with, they have a lot of challenge, insane amounts of challenge with the way the world is. But as human beings and their ability to relate, when you give them a safe environment, I may need to underline that. When you give them a safe environment, then they will open up and you will be able to have a dialogue. But it takes a lot of work
Yeah.
to create a safe environment in a family, in a sports environment, in a community or a church, or at work.
Yeah.
It became my main goal. My last 5 years was to create a safe environment where people could speak up, where they could share their ideas, or even better, share their dissent.
Yeah.
Well, you got to be super safe. to be willing to challenge your boss.
Yeah.
But I'm proud to say that the folks that worked for me did that. And we had open conversations, and it was hard because I had to be willing to have them not like what I did
Yeah.
and not defend it, and not not beat myself up for it either. Because I found out that when I beat myself up, it made it unsafe for them.
Yeah.
That was a huge aha. And it's something that happened with, but my parents in different ways would like beat themselves up for not being perfect. And that's part of how I learned that the only acceptable way to be was perfect.
Yeah.
Kids watch parents. Someday maybe you'll be a parent.
Yeah. Maybe at least a cat and a dog parent again, and maybe a parent.
Cats and dogs don't quite pay attention to you.
They don't.
Cats especially don't pay attention.
They do not, unless you're on an important video call, in which case that cat will pay attention to you the entire time. It's so funny.
Cats seem very ego-driven to me, and dogs seem very codependent. So
yeah, I would agree. I would agree. Well, on your building like a safe space point, when I was teaching tennis, I remember one moment I had where I was like, all right, like I did some good today. Was I taught this family for about 3 years. They were like a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and like a 6-year-old. The 6-year-old was the funniest little kid you've ever seen in your life. He was hilarious. But the 12-year-old was the troublemaker of all troublemakers. Like I could not get this kid to stay in line, focus, do anything. Like we had group classes. He was probably part of an 8-person group. And he was just a loose cannon. Like I could not keep tabs on that kid. Like we'd be on court 1 and he'd be on court 4 running in circles or something. And I was like, what the heck? And he wasn't particularly good at tennis. And one day he just wasn't that interested in it. Like it felt like he didn't really care, but his family played and his parents just liked the Saturday off. So they would drop them all off and then leave and then come back to pick them all up at the same time. So they'd stay there for every kid's lesson. So they were there for like 3 hours. And I remember one time it was a really snowy day and I lived in Duluth, Minnesota, and it was an indoor sports center. So only one person showed up to class and it was him. And I was like, all right, this is going to be weird because I'm teaching tennis to a kid that absolutely does not care about tennis. So I was like, hey, what do you want to do today, man? And he's like, I want to work on my volleys. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's good. That's a tennis thing. So we started doing volleys and he was missing everything. Like I was like, he literally couldn't hit it. And volleys are basically, I'm hitting the ball to you. Like it's like giving a high five essentially. So I was like, what is going on? So I was like, all right, hold on. Pretend you're playing catch with your dad. I was like, and that's all you're going to do. Instead of catching the ball, you're just going to push it with your racket. And then he said, my dad's never played catch with me. I don't know what that means. And I was like, oh, that's sad, but it makes sense because his dad was a doctor and he was the one that basically dropped him off and left. And then if he ever did stay, he'd be really annoyed about it and he'd be working the whole time. Like he'd never look up. So I was like, all right, that makes sense. So for the next 3 weeks, I just played catch with that kid after class for 10 minutes every day. When it was a group class, we just play catch. And then after that, I did private lessons with him for 3 years because he told his parents he wanted to do private tennis lessons. So that was super cool that it went from like, I thought he had no interest in tennis, but it was really this underlying issue that was causing everything. And once you find the root of that and give them a place where you're like, yeah, I get that, then, everything changes.
I love that story for so many reasons. One, because I identify with all the characters in it, right? I was the kid. I was not a sports person at all.
Yeah.
And I had 2 brothers that were much better at baseball than me. And my older brother was a pitcher. One of my younger brothers was a catcher, and I was bad.
Me too. I chased bees when I played baseball. That was all I did was run away from bees.
Well, I wasn't good at it, and I also had a what they call a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. where my belief was you either were good at something or you weren't.
Yeah. You either had talent or you didn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so there were things I was good at: math, science, playing the trumpet, drawing houses.
Yeah.
Those are the things I was good at. And there are things I wasn't innately good at, like history, or almost any sport.
Yeah.
And so basically, I ran away from the things I wasn't good at. I only did the things I was good at, and I became a very interestingly unbalanced human.
Yeah.
And yeah, and if I had somebody who like took the time to connect to me, the way that at the time my dad could not, then I might have developed a little bit more well-rounded personality back then. Meanwhile, it's never too late. And now I'm I get involved in lots of things, some of which I'm not very good at. I mean, I'm just getting into like being willing to post more on LinkedIn, and I have like one video, and it wasn't very vulnerable. This is now the most vulnerable I've been on video, and I have a plan. I have a need to post more. There are messages I want to put out there, but fear,
Yeah.
and anxiety, and I'll again back to your story. What you are doing by example, and what you're doing like in this actual call, is helping me to be more comfortable that my voice is valid. I just happen to have a dad that metaphorically would not play catch with me. And it's never too late.
Yeah.
To learn how to blossom and be you.
Yeah.
In
For
the
sure.
world.
Yeah, well, speaking of sports and from a mechanical engineer, one of my favorite bodybuilders is actually a mechanical engineer. And in all of his YouTube videos, when he's showing exercises and stuff, he actually explains like the torque and all the different, like all these different things. So he's like, if you're lifting 200 pounds on this machine, you're not actually lifting 200 pounds. If you use this hand, like he just nerds out the whole time.
Oh yeah, yeah, love that. Oh, it's interesting. Like I studied dance, ballroom, swing, Latin, country, Western. I was a competitor. I was a teacher for a long time. So dance was my hobby for 30 years, and I had some extremely talented teachers that had studied with former world champions. And there's an enormous amount of physics and engineering involved in high level dance.
Yeah.
Things that don't really make logical sense when the frame you have to hold a good, what looks simple,
Yeah.
a closed position involves a lot of flexibility, and what it takes to balance a couple out
Yeah.
is a whole lot of physics. And so I used to just get all wrapped up in the physics of dancing.
Yeah.
And of late I do a lot of spiritual study, and there's an awful lot of quantum physics in really deep spiritual phenomena. And so I regularly, with the minister I study with, I regularly get into quantum physics and physics discussions. And I love how there's different ways to look at what's going on. And so, yeah, I'm sorry, you got the nerd going in me, and I'm
No.
around.
No, I like it. Yeah, I feel like a lot of the times you find people that like do like meathead sports, like wrestling, UFC, like MMA fighting, like jiu-jitsu. They are the smartest people because it's all about technique. It's a lot, like not much of it is based on raw strength or physical ability. It's a lot about problem solving, using leverages, like adapting to your opponent and things where, I feel like when you look at it from the outside, you're like, oh, it's just two muscular dudes running at each other. But there's so much more to it. And I enjoy that aspect of it. So it is fun how you can bring, engineering or physics into everyday life or sports or whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I sort of can't help it. I mean, one of the reasons that my company is called Engineering Your Life is that I use engineering and science metaphor a lot.
Yeah.
And not because I don't know anything else, But because my pattern-seeking ADHD brain happens to be pretty good at finding the right metaphor,
Yeah.
and it turns out, there's an infinite number of ways to explain anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I also happen to believe that, anything is a metaphor for anything else,
Yeah.
depending on how deeply you look at it. And so, that's how I have understood things like, emotional regulation, because I used to, oscillate.
Yeah.
I would get really up and then feel shame and get really down, and then and I'd go up and down, and that looks like moodiness.
Yeah.
Or in an extreme, it looks like manic depressive behavior.
Yeah.
But it basically, what that means is that you just have an underdamped control system with maybe a strong proportional constant, and so you're just kind of like, that's what happens with a spring. If you have a car
Yeah.
and your shock absorbers are kind of shot,
Mm-hmm.
and you bounce a lot. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And the answer is also, to some extent, the same thing.
Yeah.
How do you slow down your response? What do you do to calm yourself? And so a tiger doesn't change his stripes, I guess.
Yeah.
So I like that you like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I'm the same way in the marketing world. My girlfriend will always make fun of me, and I'll say something, and she'll be like, "That is your marketing brain talking, because no one else will ever make that observation."
And I suppose as coaches,
Mm-hmm.
part of our job is to, one, find people that speak our language.
Yeah.
They become our population. The people I help and the people you help are just different people.
Yep.
I tend to help people that tend to be a little bit more on the technical leadership side. That's my world.
Yep.
And then you listen to them and find out what language they use. I used to just use my language only.
Mm-hmm.
And 5% of the people would be like, "Ah, cool," and the other people would like, "You're weird."
Yeah.
Well, to some extent, those are my people, and then I also needed to learn how to listen more,
Mm-hmm.
to where somebody's coming from and what their innate wisdom sounds like. And it's been a real growth experience for me, to learn how to listen.
Yeah. That is fair. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about building a personal brand on LinkedIn or wherever you're doing it is you just attract the people that want to talk to you. So you attract like-minded people without having to without having to qualify them or like have a chat thread before you hop on a coffee chat or a discovery call. Like you can just jump in and they know who they're getting into, and it's simple and it's never awkward. I've found I've recorded podcasts with people who I've literally never spoken to besides them signing up for the podcast and me hitting record and being like, "All right, what was your name again?" And okay, yeah, let me and then we just roll and it works perfect.
Well, that's because I mean, in my view, you do a hell of a job of being authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And most of my life, I lived by the Madison Avenue message that you're not good enough as you are and you need to change to be accepted by society, which I think is the toxic as hell.
Yeah.
And it is the way all advertising almost goes. But I even wrote a post early in my LinkedIn career that the hook was rejection is God's protection. And realizing that putting the word God in there chased away a lot of people, but whatever.
I'm an atheist but spiritual, but I still appreciate posts like that. Like, I don't really. It doesn't make a difference to me.
I am spiritual but not religious.
Yeah.
And even the word God, whatever, spirit, universe, life. Use a word that works for you.
Yeah.
But the point of that, and by the way, that's like a quote. That's something I've learned in recovery. But one of the things about that is exactly what you're saying. Be you. Be authentically you. the
Hmm.
people that belong around you will recognize you and say, I like that, and gather around, which is exactly how you got, what, 6,000 followers now?
Yeah, I'm at like 6,500, I think,
Yeah,
last
you're
I
just going
looked.
up like a rocket, except you don't use rocket emojis. Um,
Not
and
yet. Not till ChatGPT starts writing it all for me. Then the rocket emojis will show up.
Yeah. And in addition to the right people finding you, the people that don't align with you will recognize that and they'll just go filter themselves out. You won't have to do a darn thing.
Yep.
And it was a very, very late lesson in life for me that first required me to accept me.
Yeah. No.
And once I accepted me and got more comfortable with being vulnerable, this is like huge lesson for me
Hmm.
that's like easy, right? Yeah, right. Simple, but not easy. Because you have to risk the fear of abandonment,
Yeah.
which is lifelong for me. So, but as I've done that, the people that belong around me find me, and I am surrounded by a large, loving community that understands me and likes me anyway.
Yeah.
And the people that don't belong around me they go someplace else.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's awesome. And like my example of that is I started posting on LinkedIn in September of 2024, and then I took all of the second half of December off and all of January off. I didn't make a single post for a month and a half. And when I actually like looked at my messages, I had over 50 messages of people asking me like if I was okay, where I was, what I was doing, or just like wishing me like, "Hey, hope you're doing well. Haven't seen you in a while." And it's like that's a good feeling to know that even if you don't think you're doing a lot, like I didn't think my posts were anything super incredible or anything, but it was just nice to have that support, like knowing like, hey, people actually do think of me, even if they don't see me in their feed.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like, I ran across you and Sarah at the same time because you were doing your live thing.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what got me on that because I don't do that, right?
Yeah.
I don't, and somehow I got on that and I'm like,
Yeah.
you
There's your
guys were both
spirituality. Yeah. You found us.
so, it was about, oh yeah, spirituality. That's what hooked me.
Yeah.
It's
You
like, we're
found
talking about spirituality on the internet. I'm like, sign me up.
it.
But then you guys were so real and approachable and caring and kind. Before we wrap this up, I want to hear from you more about what you consider your brand to be,
Yeah.
because I was having a chat with someone else about your brand because I
Nice.
talked about you behind your back.
Good, good.
Um, and part of how I described your brand was kindness, and the person that I was talking to described your brand as community, and which I will not deny at
Yeah.
all. Both of which really reached me. But I'd like to hear your words about how you would describe it, because what
Yeah.
I describe is based on what I see.
Yeah, for sure. I would say you're both right. I'd say it's a community of kindness is what I'm going for. So
Fair.
I'm trying to get like-minded individuals together. So not only are they, supporting me by either signing up for my courses or coaching programs or whatever it may be, or getting me on as a consultant or a fractional CMO or something, but also just people like you and Sarah and all these other people who are interlinked in some way or might be able to benefit from each other in some way or work together or just have great coffee chats and have a friendship. Like that's really what my LinkedIn presence is all about, is just finding the right people to get in that community. And I don't really care about the money I would make from that person. It's more about hoping that they enjoy my content enough that they start looking at the other people who enjoy my content and then they start connecting with them. And that's how I've had so many great connections. Or even like podcast guests. Like last week I had a podcast guest and he reminded me of someone who I've seen their posts. Like I'm connected with them on LinkedIn, but I've never actually talked to them. And I was like, hey, like you remind me of this guy so much. Like you should connect with him. And then the same day, he messages me a few hours later. He's like, dude, I just got off the phone. I had a 2 hour chat with him. He's amazing. Get him on the podcast. Like you guys are going to be great friends. And I was like, so like things like that are kind of what I'm going for.
Well, and in fact, one of your early guests on your podcast, you recommended that I connect with, and I had a 2 hour chat with him, and it was just amazing. And
Yeah.
so I love, well, all those things are part of why, I mean, I gravitated towards you. And like, it's not that often but it does happen where I find somebody that resonates powerfully enough that I will literally like DM them and say, look, I need to meet you.
Yeah.
And you were one of them. You're in good company. There's like half a dozen of them.
Yeah.
And not all of them have the time.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them are in the presence of mind, or they're maybe overflowing with work. But that's cool. But what I've learned to do is to be vulnerable and say, hey, look, I think I should meet you.
Yeah.
I think you're cool. I like what you're doing. And yeah, one of the things about you and your message is, you know, I'm still getting to know you, but like what I can say is that what I have seen of your message, I'm like 100% behind.
Yeah.
And so that's why you see me commenting on a lot of your posts and you know, why I wanted to be here. And you pretty much going to have to tell me when the time's up, because otherwise I'll just keep going.
For sure. I definitely need to get at least one more question out of you, and then I'll let you go until next time, because we actually hit an hour, which is good for us. That flew.
This feels like 10 minutes, man.
I was just about to say, that was about 10 minutes. But yeah, I would say my personal brand is community of kindness. And then as far as like my marketing and consulting side, I'm very transparent. I'm the exact same person that you see on the podcast, in a meeting, whatever it may be. Like, that's just how I am. So even job interviews, I tell them that, because I call them, you know, I'm like, hey, thanks for calling me my friend. And they're like, wow. Like, I actually, speaking of that, the my friend term, I have a gym in my basement, like a full gym.
Okay.
And I bought this dumbbell rack with 5 to 60 pound dumbbells off of Craigslist a couple years ago. And the guy I messaged, I said, hey, my friend, just wondering if you still have these. And he's like, yeah, come on by. So I came by and bought them. And then he told me when I was there, he's like, by the way, I had 5 other people reach out to me before you, but I just liked how you said my friend. It made me feel good. So I was like, I'm gonna have this guy get first dibs. So
I have a whole story about my house.
Yeah.
For another episode, but yeah, we crave connection. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of, especially the world the way it's at now, we're starved for real connection. We have a lot of like pseudo connection.
Yeah.
Superficial, you know, people you wave at, people you barely know their name, and you know, you like talk about the weather. Mm-hmm. But we are, as human beings, need connection.
Yeah.
In various ways. But you know, so yeah, being willing to be real, being open, and being, you know, owning your stuff is like a relief.
Yeah.
And you know, LinkedIn was a frightening place for me. I told you about how often I wrote that post. I was terrified for days after I wrote that. And I'm getting really, you know, I guess flamboyant now. And I wrote a whole bunch of posts on my Pi Day party, using a lot of alliteration, which might make people groan. But it's, but the thing is that I'm being more me. Mm-hmm. And I am finding people being more comfortable with me, and I'm having much more genuine. I'm having so many conversations in comment sections.
Yeah.
Now, like honest to God, real conversations within a comment section. And all right, granted, I probably couldn't do that if I wasn't retired.
I do it.
Props to you. Sometimes I have an issue with knowing when is enough.
Yeah.
That whole regulation thing is a lifetime pursuit for me.
Yeah. My reference is when I stop caring or I'm bored, then I know I've gone too far. So then I just shut the laptop and walk away. That's kind of my self-regulation, is like, if I'm having fun doing it and I know, you know, it's not harmful, then I'm like, all right, sweet, this is good. But as soon as the boredom seeps in, or I just am disconnected, I'm like, all right, let's leave.
My limit is, well, I'm doing better about regulating, but I would get very, very engaged, very, very enthusiastic, and would not find the off switch.
Yeah.
And so it'd be like midnight or 2 a.m. or later.
Yeah.
Whether it was a work thing. Again, I said I have ADHD. One of the things about ADHD, which can be harnessed, but you need to be responsible for, is you can get laser focused on something and not shut off. And so one of the things I need to do is say, okay, that's enough. I'm having fun. I'm enjoying it, and I'm going to bed.
Yep. Yep, exactly. I think as a former super video game nerd, I can relate. I've had many 7 a.m. sleeps where I'm like, oh, the sun's out, time to go to bed.
Yeah. I actually never got into video games largely because it was too hard to regulate.
Yeah, I could see that.
Too much stimulation. I still have an issue with YouTube videos. I'll go searching out marching music videos and I will watch them for 3 or 4 hours and I'm like, dude, that's too much. Just stop. Yeah, but I'm not hurting anybody and I'm learning the lesson, and major key, I'm not beating myself up. I realized you said you had one more question and then I took off.
I think I took off technically, so you're okay. My last question for you was, what advice do you have for people that are afraid to post on LinkedIn or social media in general, or haven't yet? Like what kind of helped you get over that anxious hump?
That's a good point. Well, first of all, I have absolute sympathy for that because I was terrified about putting out the wrong thing or the bad thing or the thing that upset people. Number one advice is be you, be real, not necessarily be you as your extreme version of self. Be you as your core version of self. And you're really going to have a hard time going wrong if you are like that consistently. Some people won't like it. Well, if somebody doesn't like you at your core, do you really care about them? So if you are you who are you as a centered human being, not necessarily who are you in your super excited mode or your super fearful or super pissed off mode, maybe that's not the thing to do. So first check yourself in and be real. And then honestly, it's really, really hard to go wrong. And so the advice I hear, which is not the best advice for me because I was, just do it because that wasn't enough for me. But basically just take a breath, write something that you feel is representative of you and what you truly care about, and then let it go into the wilderness. Tag your friends. Then your friends may read it. That's one of my tactics is at first for a long time because no one knows me. So what I would do is I would write a post and then I would go tag people that I thought would care. And then the hard part for a while is be unattached to what the results are. Because whether or not people respond has nothing to do with you, your value, or your writing style, and almost everything to do with they had to do the laundry, or they had a project that was overdue, or they might be a little bit concerned about how it looks if they comment or post. But I found a number of people that have been reading my stuff that never comment or react ever. And meanwhile, they said, I got a whole lot about your whole series on procrastination. I'm like, wow. So ultimately, be you, do your best to be unattached to the results, and then realize if you touch one person's life, it's worth it.
No, absolutely.
And it's almost guaranteed that you will. So that's from my experience, my advice.
I like it. And I'm going to piggyback off of that and give one more piece, which is when I started my newsletter, The Motivational Penguin, I
love the title. Love the title.
Good old Lucky over there helped name it. But I posted it on LinkedIn and stuff, and I got maybe 10 subscribers my first week on it. And, I had 5,000, 4,000 followers at the time, something like that. So I was like, okay, it's like, and then I posted it on my Facebook where I'm it's only friends from high school and college. Like I've made 3 Facebook friends in the past 6 years. That's how little I'm on there. So I never post. And I was like, I'm just going to post it. Like, here's an update. Like, A, hey, I'm divorced. And 2, A2, A, I'm divorced. B, I started a newsletter. Here's me. And I had 50 people sign up out of the 400 friends I have. And I was like, what? So and I had messages from people like, hey, it's awesome to see you're doing this. And I've had people like old coworkers actually comment on it and call me about it. Or I had an old coworker 2 days ago reach out to me. He was like, "Hey, me and this other old coworker were talking about you yesterday, and I wanted to catch up. I saw you're doing some pretty cool stuff. Let's chat." So like,
That's awesome.
yeah.
I love that.
So
Sorry.
yeah. Oh, no, you're good. I was just going to say, so basically, like, don't be afraid to tag your friends and stuff because, like, you are going to judge yourself way more than they're going to judge you.
Well, and they will read it when they can. I've made it a habit for a long time of whenever I wrote a post, maybe even the silly ones, about costumes and Pi Day parties, that I would tag a lot of people that I thought would support me. And then in terms of when I wrote my first newsletter, which came out on Pi Day, right? Yeah, my
Yep.
first ever newsletter, the engineering notebook. And what I chose to do with that was to develop my mailing list by sending a link to it to virtually everyone I know.
Yeah.
And what I have found kind of surprised me because I also, when I sent that, I said, if you want a subscription, I need it in writing. Send me the word subscribe and your email address. I've gotten more than 50, maybe as many as 100
Yeah.
people that have chosen to subscribe in a week.
Yeah.
By that. And granted, I was okay if they didn't want to. I'm not set after issue 1. I am not going to mail it to anyone that didn't ask for it. But I've been really surprised. First of all, I took the time to write something I felt was really representative. And I'm pretty happy with it, actually, which is doing something for me to say that. But yeah, I've had actually a lot of people that say, yeah, sign me up. I'm interested. Yeah. But it's taken me, I've been posting for 16 months now. Because I think my very first post is November of 20,
Three?
whatever 2 years ago.
2020. I know this. I feel like since COVID, years haven't existed. So
yeah, it's been really fascinating for me. So yeah, it was like November 2023 is when my very, very first post where I posted my retirement. And since then, I've come a long way in my willingness to post, in my realizing that even my darkest fears are not going to be realized. And I'm like so worried about what people think, and largely people either don't think anything at all, or they're far kinder to me than I am to me.
Yep.
And it turns out that if you just keep being you, there's a whole movement right now about make LinkedIn weird, or there's something like that. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
I love it. I absolutely love it because it's full permission to be authentic, even in your fringes. I'm a big supporter of that, by the way. I'm a huge supporter of that movement.
Yeah. The guy that started it is, I think he's a community manager at Beehive, the newsletter company.
There's 2 people that got very involved, and he's one of them.
Yeah, I cannot think of his name to save my life. I've been connected with him like since I started on LinkedIn in September, and I've had some DMs with him actually, but I saw he's been going hard on that for the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, and he had a partner in that. They've since kind of gone separate directions, but both still with the incentive and the desire to encourage people to be literally weird. One, because weird gets you acknowledged. You're not generic. You're not formulaic. You're not like. In fact, another part of my advice would be don't be like everyone else. Don't copy everyone else. There's no value in that. Don't use ChatGPT. There's a lot of don'ts.
Oh yeah.
But ultimately, one of the things I learned as a dance teacher is you don't really tell people what not to do.
Yeah.
Because focusing on what not to do, you just gravitate towards it.
Yep.
Like you're riding a mountain bike and you're like, don't hit the cactus, don't hit the cactus, don't hit the, that's. One of the things, instead of what not to do, focus on what to do. Yeah. And, all right, granted, it's been noted that the advice, just be yourself, is kind of useless.
Because you have to discover yourself.
Yeah. First, get to know you, which is not trivial. You might need help. Coaches are good for that. Therapists are good for that. Friends are good for that. Spiritual communities are good for that. There's lots and lots of ways to find you. But once you know you, be that. Maybe you like model trains.
Yeah.
maybe you're really like me. You really like spreadsheets and analysis. Great, that's you.
Mm-hmm.
And you being you, especially when you like start to get animated about it and bounce up and down like I tend to, that's a sign. And people like that. Not everybody, but if you try to sell to everybody, you got to sell to no one.
Yeah.
You got to be so generic, milk toast, blah.
Yeah. And you're gonna be talking to boring people.
Yeah, you got lucky.
Yep.
And kindness and community and enthusiasm and cute backdrops and humor. I mean, you're very recognizable, and like, not everybody goes for that. Well, you don't need everybody.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I feel like, yeah, that's been the most fun part, is just finding how many people do align with that and how many people it resonates with. Because, like originally when I started my LinkedIn, I was working full time. So I was just like doing it for fun. And then I was just kind of just doing whatever just to see how it would grow. And then I kind of found my little niche and kind of found what worked and what people resonated with. And I just leaned into it really hard. And I just tried to make it like, I feel like there's professional Steve, like you have like my videos or podcasts or newsletters, my website, and then you have like fun, goofy Steve, which is most of me. And that's what my LinkedIn posts show for the most part.
and you're both.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in coaching and psychology terms, we call it integration, or in Jungian terms, we call it individuation. I mean, really, it is you're just marrying all the parts of you, including the invisible parts, which we call shadow. You're just making a whole person out of it, and it's all you.
Yeah.
Like I am the nerdy. I can recite 30 digits of pi at the drop of a hat. I am that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk to my stuffed monkey.
Yeah.
And I have this impish, childish playfulness. And I love puns and metaphor and dad jokes. And so I'm like, that's who I am. And I really love people that are authentic and vulnerable and that care about other people, which is kind of full circle, which brings me under like why I was like bouncing up and down at the chance to be on your podcast.
Yeah, no, this has been awesome. And speaking of dad jokes, one of my favorite things to do, since like I said, I taught kids tennis, so I got lots of dad jokes in me. But my favorite thing to do is say a horrible joke and then just stare at my girlfriend and wait for the reaction, because it makes her laugh because of the uncomfortableness. She's like, I know you're waiting for me to laugh. And I can stay straight faced and wait so long, and then she finally just has to laugh, and it's so funny.
Oh, that's a unique twist on love right there. Borders on manipulation, but I like it. And yeah, I one of the things that I learned in previous relationships, what they learned is that any response was encouragement.
Yeah.
And so on occasion, playing off of that, I would send a really bad pun.
Yeah.
And I would get a blank text in response.
That's so funny. That's equivalent to the emoji with just no face, just the little line.
This was back before the days of emojis.
Yeah.
I was created in a time where it was just dirt, on the planet. So
that is fair. My first phone was a flip phone Razor, which I felt was pretty cool when I was growing up. I don't even know if that had emojis.
I had Palm Pilots before they became Palm phones.
Okay.
And that's where I got hooked on the PDA, back when it was called a personal digital assistant.
Yeah.
And then when they came up with a phone, and I didn't do the smart version, I didn't do the internet connection, but I brought my calendar and my notebook and all that kind of stuff into my phone. I'm like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
This is awesome. And then I very slowly and with a great deal of resistance got into the realm of smartphones. And now I'm, as hooked as most people are. But yeah, it's funny. How did we get there? I now need to go back and trace.
That is a very good question, but I am not. Oh, emoji. We're talking about emojis.
Oh, emojis. Well, I sometimes make it a hobby to trace the skips.
Oh yeah. Yep, I
like
do
the
that.
skipping rock that get me to, how on earth did I end up in, Nevada?
Yep,
You know,
yep. I do the same thing. Or if I'm trying to remember something that I forgot, I just go back and I'm like, all right, what the hell were we talking about before and after that? And then hopefully it will fill in.
yeah, and sometimes it doesn't, and then it turns out that life's this grand adventure, and it's a wonderful, and seriously, sir, I am so grateful to be here. This has been way more fun than it has any right to be.
Yeah, no, I agree. We're gonna hit an hour and a half, which is how much time I had scheduled for our entire time.
Yeah,
So
and
I
I
will,
and I gotta go too, so it's all
yeah.
fine.
So I will let you go. But before I let you go, where can people find you or
Well,
sign up for your
I'm
newsletter?
on LinkedIn. Probably the easiest way to find me is search for Engineering Your Life, or Robert Haines, Haines. And that's the easiest way to find, where I'm at. I don't have a website yet. They can use, basically LinkedIn's the best. And, I have an email address, robert.haines, at engineeringyourlife.net. It's not .com. That would have cost me $5,000.
Oh yeah.
So it's .net. So engineeringyourlife.net. But either way, if you run across my stuff and you like it, awesome. And I will often be found commenting on your threads.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to it. And I will make sure to put links in the podcast description and any posts I make to your page so people can find you.
I have a blog too. You can feel free to add that.
Okay.
That's a list of it's LinkedIn posts, but it's a compilation with categories. So if
Okay.
somebody wants to read about procrastination or vulnerability or pie,
Yeah.
they can just like look through that and find my posts on that.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure I'll have you back here not too long. So I appreciate the time today, Robert. You go off and do whatever else you need to do on this Friday, and I will be in touch with you soon. And everyone who listened, thank you for joining us for the Steven Rockwood Show, and we will see you again next week.
Thank you. Take care.
You as well.